Hey guys, Glendros here. So, as I mentioned yesterday, we got some really interesting stuff coming this week. Um, this is going to be all ladies week, so we're going to kick things off with one of my personal favorite um, bands. Especially this one is really unique because there's really not a ton of bands out there that are all female, right? So, especially an all female thrash band is something very unique. So, for those who are familiar, this is going to be a breakdown of Nervosa. They're a band from Brazil. As I mentioned, all female. The this particular song that we're gonna do is off their album Agony, which let me see if I can figure out when this was released. I want to say it was like 2009, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do have, I've got lyrics for this one. This will probably be a fairly short review because it's not a super complex song. In that regard, it's actually a little unique for this channel because I tend more towards the really complex, stuff. But I'm also a diehard thrash fan. So for me, thrash is just what I was raised on. And when I heard this song, I think the song was called Death, was the song that I heard from them. And all I heard was the song. I didn't see the video. There's a music video for that song. So I didn't know they were an all-female band. I actually didn't even know it was a female vocalist. And you'll hear when you listen to it, it can actually be very difficult to tell for reasons that we'll get into. So this song is called Wayfarer, and it was actually a bonus track, I believe, on the record. It was not an actual. It was not an actual song that was on the regular track listing for the album, I don't believe. But it's and it was a very divisive track because I read some reviews that were very high on the album and didn't like this song at all. And we'll get into a little bit of why that is, why that might be, as we go through the breakdown of the song. So, but we'll go ahead and get into this one. This is a really cool song. Hope you guys like it as much as I do. But before I play it, I would definitely say this is one where you really got to go into the song with an open mind. I mentioned that this is a thrash band, but kind of set that aside in terms of genre, because this song is certainly a genre defying song. It does not it's not necessarily traditional thrash, although there certainly is that in there. But so let's go ahead and jump into this.
So many times we chance, or your life will never change. Because you are the choices you make. So give up, give in, give it all you got. Life is nothing if you don't risk. So do something today that your future self will thank you for. And hold on to your dreams, not to your fears. You are free to make your choices, but you ain't free to choose your consequences. But have in mind, if you win, you will be fulfilled. And if you lose, you will be wiser.
All right. So probably not what you were expecting, I would imagine. Um, so a couple of I made some notes on this one. Um, so first off, as you heard there at the end when it restarted, um, awesome bass riff, kind of opens things up. Um, Everyone gets a little moment in this one, because in the beginning you have the bass and the guitars. You got that great bass riff, and then there's a really cool little lead, bluesy lead guitar riff, which I love. It's not super difficult. Actually, nothing in the song is very difficult. But it's nice. It's got like this little bluesy bite to it. But the real thing that obviously we want to talk about in the beginning is the vocals. So the bass player for Nervosa, Fernanda, is the singer, and I really, when I first heard this, I thought it was a guest vocalist, but no, it's actually her. So she's kind of an accomplished, I guess, classical jazz singer, which is really cool because this beginning part and the end part have this really classic, old school, jazz like vocal style, like Billie Holiday or something, and it's just really cool. I love the like raspy, just vibe that it gives off, and as someone who now seems to, it almost feels like I have a permanently raspy voice now because of this damn laryngitis. But yeah, I mean it's really unique and it's very different. And then at around a minute 20 or a minute 30 or something like that, we get into the actual thrash portion of the song, the more traditional Nervosa part of the song. It's again, like with the stuff earlier, there's nothing crazy here. It's just a really basic, hard hitting thrash riff, and it kind of cycles up at around the 2 minute mark into like a faster riff that kind of maintains, um, uh, all the way up until around 3 minutes and 30 seconds of the song, and then the riff changes again. Um, so again, the thing we need to talk about is the vocals, because Fernanda's normal vocal style that you hear in all their other songs and you hear here in this song is very, very reminiscent of Chuck Schuldiner to me. Like when I heard it, I was like, holy crap! This guy could be like, the singer for Death if they did like a like a tribute touring thing, right? Which actually did do. And then imagine my surprise to find out that that wasn't a he at all. Um, and it's really funny because when you see interviews with her, she's a very very small, like beautiful, like beautiful woman, and she's like got this crazy, like really raspy, like like I said, it sounds a lot like Death. And I love that vocal style. And there's also Vector has some of that as well. Not as refined as Chuck or Fernanda, but Vector's his style. It's very interesting when you listen to Vector because his stuff is like very very like wild, like you're never sure whether he's even like if you listen to it, you're like, did he even survive that vocal session? Because it sounds like he has got like no technique at all. But I mean, it's got a really cool sound. It just sounds very untrained and just kind of goes all over the place. But Fernanda's vocal style is very tight and very controlled, I think, and she just has a really awesome, like, just metal delivery. It's really great, and it fits this particular style of thrash really well, just as those vocals work with Vector. I think thrash is a style of music where in the 80s you had everything was cleanly sung but with like a harder edge, but it seems like nowadays a lot of the thrash bands are using extreme metal vocals, whether it's like more of death metal or a black metal influence. There's a lot of that out there, and then there's some thrash bands that actually are it's kind of like mixing black metal and metalcore. Like a good example of that is like Black Fast, who's a band we'll definitely be reacting to at some maybe next week, because I love those guys. But they have almost a little bit of a metalcore sound of the vocals, but very high register wise, because I think the singer is trying to do a black metal vocal, but not necessarily pulling it off, or he doesn't want to fully commit to it, for fear of, damaging his voice or something. So it's really interesting, and like when I listened to the vocals, it reminded me so much of Sound of Perseverance, that particular Death album, where his vocals are much higher than on, say, Human or even Symbolic. But the riff changes up again at around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's kind of a little bit more of I felt when I first heard it that it was a major key change, but I don't know if it actually is. It just sounds much lighter, because up until that point the riff was fairly sinister sounding, typical aggressive thrash. Where in this particular riff change, it's a lighter, a little faster. So it was an interesting change up to go into the end of the song, and that sort of takes us into this great drum, like not solo, a little bit of a solo, I guess, to end out the thrash portion of the song before we go into the a cappella section. Their drummer during this album, Pichu is her name. Probably mangled the pronunciation of that. Unfortunately, is no longer with the band, but she was awesome. Like on Agony, her like drumming was great. The new drummer, not quite so sold on her. I mean, she's fine, but Peachy was like really good, so I think it was a bit of a loss to lose her. Um, and that's kind of at around the 420 mark, and then we go into the acapella outro. And I mean, really, what more can you say about that acapella outro? It's fantastic. It's very classical. I can definitely see though why people who review this album did not like this song, because it's so abrupt of a change from the hard hitting thrash that makes up the rest of the album. And then to end on this classical jazz a cappella outro is really unusual. But it's so good, and there's some great belting actually in this last part of the outro. She goes for some really powerful like high notes, and she just nails it. It's really great. So I can see why people who review the album had a difficult time with this particular song. I personally didn't. I thought it was great, but I come from a jazz background, so like when I was working up in DC, I used to go to the jazz club. Where I worked, there was a jazz club on the roof, and I used to go to that jazz club all the time. And you hear such a different, and at that time I was into, at that point, primarily power metal, progressive metal, symphonic metal. So Therian, Iced Earth, Blind Guardian, Dream Theater. That was what I was like listening to at that time. So I was really looking for things that were, outside of the box. And so like I found so many of these great jazz guitar players and jazz singers. And, of course I heard a lot of the classics, like I mentioned, Billie Holiday and stuff. And it's something where you develop a bit of a real love and affinity for it. And I think maybe it, if you've never been exposed to it, and you hear it at the tail end of a thrash metal song, it's probably very disconcerting. So I can totally understand why people didn't like this song. But to me, it's my favorite song on the album because it showed the band was able to do something way beyond what I think most people would have thought they could do. And I just have tons of respect for that. You don't need to do that all the time, especially if you're a thrash band. There's nothing wrong with sticking in your space that you're best at. If you're a thrash band, play thrash. But, being able to flex your muscles every once in a while, if you have the capability to do so, shows your potential to evolve, which I think a lot of bands, you've got to be able to evolve. I mean, look at Metallica and Megadeth, right? Two of the most long-running thrash bands. Both of those bands have evolved over time. Now, Megadeth is more closely, I think, in tune with what they were, where Metallica is kind of gone the opposite direction, where occasionally they'll dip back into their old school thrash roots. But I think Metallica, more than anything now, is living in that space of like a more accessible mix of thrash and just regular metal. Kind of like, that really what they sort of established with the Black Album. So it's totally one of those things where I really like to see that sort of evolution occur, as long as it's not too abrupt. A couple weeks ago, I did a band, and I love the band. Tons of respect for them. But I cannot listen to their new stuff at all. And that's Pain of Salvation. I've got just so much respect for Daniel, his ability, and his willingness to stick to what he wants to do. But at the same time, I can't stand the new stuff. I really can't. And I mean, I just don't know what to say. I mean, like I said, I do kind of keep an eye on them. Like, I'll listen to a new song to see if they've gone back. They never did a Perfect Element Part 2. You know, they did Perfect Element Part 1, which, you know, Idioglacia, which is the song that I did, is on that album. And, you know, the idea, I think, was at some point is that they were going to do a Perfect Element Part 2, and they never really did. So, I think when I look at them now, I feel like maybe it's a similar situation to Opeth, where the band feels that they've moved beyond those early roots, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. At the end of the day, the band is making music for themselves. I mean, they're making, you know, the idea of music is to be heard, but you're playing what you want to play. You're not playing, if everyone was playing what was popular, nothing, you wouldn't hear anything except for Justin Bieber out there. So, you know, it's, you have to respect the artistic vision of these guys. So it's the same thing with this Nervosa song. But I think with the Nervosa song, there was still that undercurrent of what they are, that thrash. And I like the transition both into and out of both parts. So I think they did a really good job of connecting what felt like it was actually maybe written as two different short songs. A jazz song with a little bit of heavy guitar in it in the beginning, and a thrash song, and then just split the jazz part into two parts to bookend around the thrash song. And I mean, but the way it was done, to me it was seamless. So, but I'll be interested to see what people think in the comments. So, if you, you know, let me know what you guys think on this one, because I could definitely foresee this one as being pretty divisive. So, I'm interested to see whether people like this or hate it, think it was too disjointed, or, you know, wish that they had just done two different songs, or if you think like I do that it's perfect the way it is. So let me know in the comments below. I'm going to take a quick look at the lyrics here, because the lyrics are actually really cool. So so this is the verse. The way this is written up on the thing here, the verses are the jazz sections and the chorus is the metal section. It's not the way the song actually is, but the way that the person did the lyrics, that's the way they wrote it out. So the verse, this is the jazz section, the intro. So many times we think we have no choices, and we're always between the right and the wrong, and all that is left is to risk it. This is not the greatest. We don't know where this path will lead, but no matter what your destiny is, you have to face it. And I think this song is very appropriately titled Wayfarer. And it's about being willing to take a risk and get out there, put yourself out there, and just go for it, you know? If we think, and we sit there mulling things over, and then everything passes us by. So sometimes, you know, right or wrong, you got to make a choice and take a stand for what you want to do, right? And then the chorus goes on to say, there may be rocks in your way, but you will need to use your force. You will need to believe in your force. Wayfarer, there may be rocks in your way, but you will need to use your force and you'll need to believe in your force, Wayfarer. And then, so that's the thrash part of the song. So again, what I was saying, not only do you have to act with passion, but you have to believe in what you're doing. And then the final verse, which is the a cappella section, sometimes the hardest thing is the right thing to do. You must take a chance or your life will never change, because you are the choices you make. So give up, give in, and give it all you've got. Life is nothing if you don't risk. So do something today that your future self will thank you for. And hold on to your dreams, not to your fears. You are free to make your choices, but you ain't free to choose the consequences. But have in mind, if you win, you will be fulfilled. If you lose, you will be the wiser. Which this last verse is so good. It's simple, but this is really like, it's funny because I don't know how old they were. I mean, she couldn't have been more than like 20 when she wrote this song, I would think. And I mean, this is pretty wise stuff, because it's so true. I mean, sometimes the most difficult thing you can do is the right thing. It's the unpopular thing. It's the thing that's going to end up kicking you in the face eventually. But if you don't take that chance, you're just going to be stuck in a rut, or you're going to be miserable because you didn't do what you knew was right. Those are the choices that you got to make, right? So you just got to give into what you want to do and make the choice. And, it says here, life is nothing if you don't take a risk, which is true. Life is really boring if you just don't take any risks, if you just take the easy path, right? And, the easy path can really lead to a lot of dangerous and pretty bad stuff, right? The tougher thing to do always is the right thing. And she says, so do something today that your future self will thank you for. So, and I mean, that cuts two ways, because, people talk about, not being able to take a risk and, the consequences from that and having a tough time living with it, right? But if you risk, but you do what you believe is right, you're not going to doubt yourself in the future. You're not going to say, man, I wish I had done this. You did it. You may say, man, I did that, but, it kind of didn't work out for me. But you did it. You're not kicking yourself for not making the choice. And then, the last couple lines here, you're free to make your choices, but you're not free to choose the consequences, which is so true. I mean, you've got, in a given day, hundreds of choices that you make, right? And little and big consequences, right? But you don't have a choice in what those consequences are. You can't see them. We're not prescient. We don't know what's going to happen. So that's why it's a risk, but the last two lines, that is what you need to really think about, because at the end of the day, if you make the wrong choice or you make the right choice and the results are not what you hoped for, you're the wiser for it, right? So maybe it's not the right choice. You thought it was the right choice, but it's not the right choice. But you've learned from that choice because it was your choice. It was your decision. So, very important lyrics. It's a simple song, there's not a ton lyrically, but what's there is super important and something you can take with you and actually learn from, which, I don't know how often you can say that about, a metal song where you can apply it to everyday life. So, pretty awesome stuff. This band is amazing. I would recommend checking out some of their other stuff, especially if you like thrash. That middle section is a good representation of what their overall thrash sound is like. They do have usually guitar solos and things like that, but this song with the way it was structured, they didn't have any of that in this one. But I think you got a feel for the fact that the band is talented. We heard a little short bass solo, short drum solo, some cool lead guitar in the beginning, so you kind of know these guys know their stuff. They may not be they're not Vector, right? It's not like ultra technical, crazy thrash, but these guys can play. These girls, I should say, can play. So yeah, I think we got Ladies Week off to a great start. There'll be another song probably uploaded tomorrow for Chelsea Wolf, I believe it is. The recommendation from Jen. So keep an eye out for that one. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to be doing, for sure, Offenhammer and Unleash the Archers. And maybe some other ones as well. So that's it for this one. Great song. If you like the band, check them out. Stay metal. Calendros out.